The overwhelm, the feeling like you're carrying this mental load that never has an off switch. Well, I've always been a believer that the right technology could, change and transform outcomes. So Innerhive was really formed with the intent to end caregiver burnout, because when everyone's operating from the same baseline of information, it reduces a lot of that dysfunction. It takes away some of the misalignment. It brings people together and you feel like, hey, we're actually collectively a team. I feel like sometimes technology can feel overwhelming. It can feel scary. We can move fast. But I think sometimes people forget that if you can come from a place of having lived it, having experienced it as a person, as a whole human, it makes thinking about the design of technology different. I can't unsee what I saw families experiencing. I can't unfeel. And that generated a whole new purpose. Getting to be the daughter falls wayside. And so you miss some of those softer emotional connections. When care complexity and care hours go up, that's often when you see the caregiver wellness go down. Because people show up and they just think, I'm just helping. And before you know it, it turns into my mom fell and I'm helping and she had surgery. And then it goes from there and you have this domino effect. And now you're taking a leave of absence and your life is shifting. What did you wish you knew in the first month of caregiving? I was like, the first month, I didn't know anything. I was like, breathe, get through. Okay, what? You're scrambling. You're trying to, keep your head above water. That burnout hits deeper because the mental load, there's not an off switch. And you are the second brains. It would almost be like micro panic attacks because you're like, oh my gosh, did I end up putting the alarm on? So it means a lot when people stop and they see you and they care and they ask how you're doing. And it doesn't mean that you need to have an opinion on what to do or how to feel or if they can help. It's just that simple question of, hey, Crystal, how are you doing today? I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect calm, but I absolutely think that there's a way to kind of ride these waves together so that we're not drowning or slowly suffocating in silence.
What happens when the person holding everything together becomes the one who's falling apart? Caregiving doesn't wait for the right timing. It doesn't ask permission. One moment you're living your life, and the next you're coordinating care, managing crisis, and losing pieces of yourself while trying to save someone you love. Today's episode is about what caregiving really feels like, the grief of stepping into an unexpected role, the growth that follows when you find clarity, and the grace that comes from finally receiving the support instead of carrying the load alone. Welcome back to Rosabel Unscripted. Today, I am joined by someone whose work is transforming the caregiving landscape in ways families desperately need. Her name is Crystal Gao. She's the founder and chief empathy officer of Innerhive. She has spent 15 years building teams in the tech world, but everything changed when caregiving came into her life unexpectedly. Through navigating care for her family, she uncovered a truth most people don't realize until they're in it. Caregivers are overwhelmed, isolated, and burning out in silence. Crystal took her lived experience and built Innerhive, a platform that provides clarity, connection, and support to caregivers coordinating care at home. And today, we're talking about how we get there. Crystal, before Innerhive ever existed, was there a moment where a caregiver entered your life and shifted your direction? Can you share that turning point with us?
Yeah, that was me. Our family went through a shift during the pandemic, and I think sometimes, when you think about extending care, it starts with helping, and then it kind of snowballs from there. And I know for us, it started with a phone call. It was an accident, a diagnosis, and then from there, you have to make a series of hard decisions. And while they may be imperfect, it was the best that we could do with what we knew, and we kind of took that opportunity for what it was, and realized that as we got into the thick of it, something I had initially thought was this was a personal failure. This was, just something happening to me, to our family. And the more I learned, the more I recognized and took time to kind of connect with others and explore what was going on. That's when I had the moment of, this is actually a common issue. There's a common denominator that many of us share. And there's many families out there that are navigating care. It just might look a little different. They might be at a different part of their journey, but the overwhelm, the feeling like, you're carrying this mental load that never has an off switch, the feeling that it becomes so hard to connect with others. It becomes almost draining and exhausting to try to articulate or share your story. And so you start to kind of shut down and find this space of isolation, which is not healthy. And that's kind of where it started. And so before Innerhive, that was the crux of the experience I hadn't had, but I was sitting very deep, very fresh, trying to figure out how to, navigate, get through, protect both my own self and my own identity, my own wellness, as well as those that I was extending care for. Um, and it's
How
not
long
easy.
into your caregiver journey, the idea of Innerhive, or how did you arrive to that idea?
Yeah, well, I've always been a believer that the right technology could, change and transform outcomes. And so my prior self had lived in technology for 15 years, working in high growth companies. And so we're always evolving, we're always thinking, we're always solving points, tension, friction, problems. And I didn't realize until about a year in when I had this notion that we could figure it out. We've got this, we're working remote. No, I was a puddle on the floor. I was struggling. I was shutting people out. I was feeling like the spectrum of emotion that I was going through was very new to me, but I was not handling it very well. And so I started talking with others. And I think that's really what opened the door to Inner Hive when I realized that this shared kind of journey was something that we could have influence over, that there was a possibility we can't solve the whole thing. It's a systemic issue. It's not, a personal failure, but if we could start somewhere, what would that look like? And so that was the inspiration. That was the fire for Inner Hive. It's like, let's do something. Let's be part of this change. Let's listen to families. Let's learn with families. We've sat in the pain. Let's come together and figure out, what can we change going forward? Um, you know, Maybe call me an optimist, but I do believe, there is a path forward. And I think about, the day when we can get to a place where care is coordinated, where we can be more present, where caregivers are recognized in their role. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of things that I have a lot of hope for in terms of, we make these micro changes and we can get there.
Absolutely. So, for those who do not know what Innerhive is, can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, so Innerhive was really formed with the intent to end caregiver burnout. So we knew that, a lot of families are navigating a lot of information. And when you're in this information overload paralysis, space, it's really difficult to have clarity, to know what to do next, to who to talk to, how to make the decision. And so we knew that the first degree of helping families would very much be if we can bring them clarity, that opens the door to connection. And then having that connection opens the door to support. And so when you think of it like that kind of link or a chain or a sequence, we knew that if we can start by saying, hey, let's use technology to capture information, it can summarize, you can easily share it, it will be your bridge to your support network. It opens the door for you to build your community and find support. It gets at how can we think about wellness for the caregiver and how can we think about wellness for the care recipient? Because not only is information falling through the cracks when people are overloaded, the caregivers are too. You know, People are showing up and they're not thinking about how is the caregiver doing. It may not be their responsibility to ask, what can I help you with or how are you doing today? And so I think it's really important that if we want to get to wellness, we have to think of that clarity, connection, and support as a really important sequence to chip away at.
So, Innerhive is an app, right? That you created, correct?
That is correct. Yep. It's available. You want to use on your iPad, your phone, your desktop, computer, whatever, we meet you where you're at. So
What do you think Innerhive does for caregivers that other apps, or what is the main drive or the main thing that you said, this is what I know Innerhive can deliver for this caregivers?
yeah, that first point of value when you come in, we try to make it really simple. So in just a couple of clicks, capture this information, get a summary, share it with your community, and it puts into focus like here's the things that I need to do next. So it takes the swath of 20-page discharge packet. It takes a 1 hour conversation with the doctor. It takes a 30-minute at-home care conversation. It's really difficult to sift through that noise sometimes. And Innerhive does a really great job of let's just focus on what the highlights are. Let's give you the things that you need to take action on and then make it really easy for you to share with your support network. Because when everyone's operating from the same baseline of information, it it reduces a lot of that dysfunction. It takes away some of the misalignment. It brings people together and you feel like, hey, we're actually collectively a team, we're a unit, we're moving forward, we're sharing the care responsibilities. And that changes outcomes. That informs decisions differently. It changes, it shifts emotionally how people connect. And that was something that was really powerful. We really wanted to focus on offering that to families first.
That is beautiful. Now, is there a story from your journey that continues to teach you or shape how you lead Innerhive?
Oh wow. I don't know that this is from my journey or if this is just something that I felt a strong pull towards as someone that's been in technology. I feel like sometimes technology can feel overwhelming, it can feel scary, we can move fast. But I think sometimes people forget that if you can come from a place of having lived it, having experienced it as a person, as a whole human, it makes thinking about the design of technology different. You're not just a technologist building something, you're actually a caregiver thinking about, hey, how would this help me? How would this help others? How do I make this so it's easy? How do I make this so that I'm actually reducing some of that mental load? Um, that human side of design, I think, is so, so critical when you think about building things that bring value to families. Adjacent to that, it's, when you pair people and you pair technology, the power of the two together, I think, is where you see a lot of potential. There's a lot of visions that are realized when you bring the two. But I do think it's important to respect, with technology, there's limitations, and there's also things that we need to respect in terms of data ethics. How we handle people's information, giving people control and access over their stories so they can advocate. Those are really important things that are part of that design, and that's really stuck with us as we've continued to kind of grow and listen to feedback and iterate on Innerhive.
Wow. Chief Empathy Officer. That's powerful. Who came out with that title?
I mean, is there a better title? Because I feel like when you're sitting in it and you've come from it, it's real. Like you're here from what you went through. And so it was really important for me that if I'm going to flip my career upside down, if you will, that's the perspective I've gotten from people that have looked historically at my trajectory. To me, it was, I got the opportunity to gain a new perspective, and I can't unsee what I saw families experiencing. I can't unfeel. And that generated a whole new purpose. And so it was really, really intentional that if I'm going to be doing something that's helping families, something that was born from my own, situation, that I want to ensure that as I'm making choices, as I'm leading, as I'm connecting with families, that they recognize I've sat in this and we have a common, denominator, there's empathy there.
Absolutely. Now, for the caregiver that is listening right now who's tired, overwhelmed, perhaps carrying guilt, what would you want them to hear from you?
Oh, oh wow. I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. I think that there's tools and there's resources and there's support out there that can help make the journey lighter. I think it can allow you the opportunity to be present because I think we, at least from my experience, where I really had a hard time was there was friction with being a caregiver. And so you're always thinking about all the transactional things, the food, the transport, the appointments, the medication distribution, the safety. And then what happens is getting to be the daughter falls wayside. And so you miss some of those softer emotional connections. And I think, when you're going through these emotions, I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to feel them. I think it's important to recognize them. I think, when the time is right and you want to talk to others about them, you'll probably find there's far more people out there that are going through and navigating it. Um, it's just, I feel like it's part of the journey. And, I think grief or anticipatory grief, I think guilt, those things are very ripe. But also what it tells me is when you've got this depth of compassion and emotion, there's something really powerful there in that connection. There's a love that's really deep. So I welcome, one without the other. I prefer, if I'm gonna have a strong, deep, loving relationship, then I'm going to accept that there's going to be, the highs and lows of the emotion, and it's gonna be the spectrum at different points in the journey.
Well, looking ahead, what do you hope Inner Hive ignites in the future of caregiving and family support?
Oh, well, how would you define family support?
Well, I'm talking about the whole cohesive, the whole a group. Let's say you have the person that you're taking care of, and then, and when we say family, I mean, could they be blood relatives or could be even friends? Because in my clinic, I am so impressed when I see this perhaps patient with dementia that come in and they said, "Oh, she is my best friend and I decided to take care of her." It's like that you're right. I mean, family, we tend to think that family is just the people that, we were born, the nucleus, right? Where we were born into, but family can be anything. So in general, support for that. And also, we also I think the reason why I really like having this conversation with you, and this is something I'm very deeply close to, is because we tend to think about the person, yes, the person that's going through the problem, or the let's say whether it's dementia or a mental illness, or uh like a life, you know long-term illness. um I'm talking about, yes, that person needs support, but the person who's giving the care is also, so it's like a double. It's like, how can we, I'm kind of curious to see how Innerhive, do you see a path where Innerhive cares for both the the caregiver and the person who's being taken care of? I think so. I think I can see that for what you have told me.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, you just hit on it. There's a cost. There's an emotional, a relational, financial. Like when information doesn't flow between families, professionals, caregivers, that hits on the question you just asked before. Like, what do you do when you feel out of the loop and you feel guilty because you don't know the answer, or you feel anxiety because you're showing up again and you're rushed and you don't have all the questions, or, you're living in this kind of chaos environment. And so, yeah, I think there's absolutely a cost for the caregiver and the care recipient. And our goal was, if we knew that getting to wellness meant making it easier for families to get out of that crisis, to have clarity, to open the door to build that, support network, that makes it so much easier to ask the question and say, "Hey, Rosabel, how are you doing? I noticed that your mom didn't recognize you last week. That has to be really hard. Do you want to talk about it? Or, here's something that I found helpful," or, whatever that may be. But it just opens the door to start to bring awareness, because when care complexity and care hours go up, that's often when you see the caregiver wellness go down. And so the more that we can kind of bring awareness to that, and then the more that we can start to close the gaps, offer support, bring recommendations, I think it makes it easier to promote wellness for the caregiver just as much as the care recipient.
That is beautiful. To me, that's holistic. It's everything, encompassing everything. That is why I'm, as you probably know, for a few talks we had in the past. I care for mostly memory patients, dementia patients in clinic, and again, we always see we're focusing on the patient, but I'm always looking at the caregivers and thinking, how are you doing? You're a human being too. You have needs. You have all these things. You have, again, this load. Yes, you're doing it lovingly and
Hmm.
everything, but you also need someone to ask you, how's your life? How are you
Yeah.
taking this, right? And so another thing I like about, I love about the program that you have with Inner Hive. Again, it's good when we are like, oh yeah, Crystal, she knows what she's talking about. She knows where she's coming from. She lived it. She know this from her own experience, and I love it. Is there anything that you want to show us? Do you have anything that you would like, for people to know specifically about Inner Hive?
Yeah, I'd be happy to show a quick snippet so people know when they, if they have interest in exploring this, what that looks like when they come in. I think before I do that, I'm curious. You just hit on something that was really unique in terms of your perspective is different because you're coming at this from a professional lens. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts around when you think of professional and you think of families and how they're kind of bridging and collectively working together. What's your perspective on how professionals can kind of play a support in the family caregiver role?
Well, that's a great question, and let me tell you why. Because I'm a nurse practitioner, so when I think about, and I can only speak for what I've perceived, not because I necessarily have asked, like for example, physicians, but my what I've noticed is the focus is on on the patient, right? Of course, it's
Mm.
clinical, and yes, but there's not a whole lot of focus on the caregiver. I have to be honest with you, but me personally. Uh, the moment that I started working with this population, I wanted to also, give them a look, because I feel that they're the basis. If the caregiver is not well, if they're not, how, these are persons. I have patients who have severe let's say dementia, they are not able to make their own decisions. They are not able. So if the person that's taking care of them is not well, how else is this person going to be?
Mhm.
So for me, that is my perspective, and I put a lot of emphasis on it personally. To me, that's important. And that's what I do in my practice. I don't know how many other, depending on what practice, you go to, but that is that's what I do. I see everything as a whole.
I love that. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, largely the healthcare system is designed around patients and it should be and it's looking and thinking about them, but I love where I've seen success and I've seen cases that maybe are more of an anomaly and I've had micro instances of this, but it's someone like yourself who can come in and have a conversation and they see the caregiver. So, it's not just information that falls through the cracks. Like I said, I really believe that it's also, "Hey, how are you doing?" Acknowledging the person that's there extending care. And I'd love to
Yes.
see like a future where, caregiver strain and stress is actually part of the intake. It's not just who's the
Yes.
emergency contact. It's like, how is that emergency contact, AKA the caregiver, doing? Are there signs of exhaustion or depletion? We're already doing this intuitively, I imagine, but actually bringing that into the process, actually educating people on the role because people show up and they just think, I'm just helping. And before you know it, it turns into my mom fell and I'm helping and she had surgery. And then, it goes from there and you have this domino effect. And now you're taking a leave of absence and your life is shifting. And so most family
Absolutely.
caregivers don't even know. They don't realize that, oh, I'm actually, extending care and I'm no longer helping. And therefore, like maybe I should reevaluate what tools or support, or I should look differently at, you know, creating an
Yes.
infrastructure that's going to make this sustainable for me, not just
And then the
living
other
in this
the other
reactive.
thing I also think about is for that caregiver, I say, okay, if you were, have you thought about yourself? Have you thought if you get, something happens to you, you get sick? I mean, who's gonna take care of you?
Hmm.
All
Yeah,
those things that we don't think, and sometimes we think, oh well, I'm younger. I'm like, had nothing to do with, it's, we're all humans and we all have needs. And but to be honest with you, one of the things that really makes me happy in clinic is when that caregiver feels, oh, she hears me, she can hear, she listens to me, she hears me.
mm,
And you know how I see it, their whole, there's like this aura change, and when they change, the person who's taking care for, they
yeah,
also change the apprehension, the anxiety. It's almost magic. It happens in front of me, like literally almost like all the time. It happened to me
yeah,
today when I'm a patient, because here's what happened. I'm gonna give you an example, and I don't know if I'm gonna be good at giving this example, but let's say here's the wife. She's very anxious and going through, a crisis. The husband, trying to understand what's going on, he's like trying to calm her down. And he's like, what do I do? What do I do? And then there's the son here. And then the moment I shift first to the husband and try to kind of understand what's going on with him, then he relaxes. The moment he relaxed, then the person,
hmm,
the wife, she's like, it's almost as if they're mirrors. I
energy,
try to tell,
energy.
you're
Yeah,
exactly, you're a mirror.
yeah,
You show the person next that you're taking care of that, hey, we got this. That's what we need to take care of our caregivers. We need to give them the reassurance, because if they're reassured, if they're taken care of, then they're going to do a much better job with the person they're
100%.
taking care of for.
Yeah,
So I think that's one of the joys of my job, to see those little meaningful changes. I mean, when it comes to certain things, like, they're, we're honest, we're not going to be able to, cure, or perhaps, but it's about quality of life. It's about,
yeah,
you know, going through, taking those deep breaths, and I'm like, okay, we're going to be fine,
yeah.
even though we're going through all of this, through these difficulties. But wow. So show me what you got to show us.
Yeah, well, I will say one thing that you just said right there that I love, and I've seen some other people do this really well, is when
Uh-huh.
you respect that the caregiver's trying and they have good intention, and instead, sometimes there's a power dynamic shift, but when you have someone that's actually willing to coach and not just give instruction, just like you had said, that energy shift, I have seen that where it's like they want to care, they want to check in. they just maybe need a little guidance on what should I do? What should I be considering? What should I be looking for? And so sometimes that care and extending and saying, hey, I know you care and I know you're going to do this and we trust that and here's a little guidance. I know that goes a long way because when I first, in the very beginning, I had someone ask me and they had said, what did you wish you knew in the first month of caregiving? I was like, the first month, I didn't know anything. I was like, breathe, get through. Okay, what you're scrambling, you're trying to, keep your head above water. Like it took me months just to figure out that, okay, I'm cobbling everything together. I'm living on, I don't even know, lost notebooks, writing I can't even like scribble and I can't even recognize what it was. I had sticky notes everywhere. It was a mess. And just like what you had said is with cognitive conditions, you end up carrying a little bit more weight. I really think people that are extending care for anyone that's navigating dementia or Alzheimer's, any sort of cognitive decline, that burnout hits deeper because the mental load, there's not an off switch and you are the second brain. So if you don't have infrastructure to help you stay organized and on top of it, I don't know, for me, you wake up in the middle of the night and it's 3 a.m. and you're already struggling to sleep and it would just be like heart palpitations. It would almost be like micro panic attacks because you're like, oh my gosh, did I end up putting the alarm on? Did I close, because when you get to a certain point and at the very end, my uncle was nonverbal and the condition with my mom's dementia had progressed where it needed 24/7 care. And so we were on a rotation and our first story of our home was our living room before, but we ended up moving it and turning it into a bedroom. But you really have to childproof everything because we had an incident where she tried to take our teapot and put it on the stove and spark a fire. And then she tried to wander out one time and we had alerts on the door and we had to put a camera outside because one of the exits, she could open that gate easier. And so there's a million little things that you're thinking about. And I just had moments where I'd wake up in the middle of the night just wondering because you're just going on this autopilot of survival that sometimes you miss some of those details. So it means a lot when people stop and they see you and they care and they ask how you're doing. And it doesn't mean that you need to have an opinion on what to do or how to feel or if they can help. It's just that simple question of, hey, Crystal, how are you doing today? Like even just that's like, they see me. I'm not invisible.
Right,
So
right. And
anyway.
truly, yeah, that's such a yes, so empowering, so empowering. I was just thinking about what you say. You mentioned the word coach, and yes, coaching. I mean, that's something I don't see very often,
Mm.
but it's definitely needed for the caregivers. Like especially when it comes to communication. I mean, there's so many things that shift and change, and so I see you got something pulled out. So tell me.
Yes, I do. So you can see my window. This is what it looks like if you were to bop into our app. So really what I just want to show you is when you come in, you kind of land on this homepage and people have the opportunity to just capture these conversations. They can happen at home, they can happen at doctor's appointments, they can happen on the go. We really designed it so that it would be voice first. We wanted to make it really simple. So you can actually, I'll do this. You can tap this. It just lets you know we're going to give you a summary. You have the ability to control who sees it. You're going to be able to add, invite people, curate your own community. It can run in the background. These are other notes here. We want technology to kind of be ambient. Our whole goal is to allow caregivers to be present because a lot of people expressed, frustration, they expressed concern, they felt guilt, they felt all of those emotions that you said earlier because they're showing up, they're trying to remember everything, they're trying to track all the information they're given. They hear a new diagnosis and then everything else fades away and they forget to even keep taking notes. They take notes and they're messy. They take notes and they leave them, and then all of that's happening and you're not actually there comforting, just like you said, the person that you're extending care to. So we really wanted to make it easy. And here's an example of what that looks like. People have the opportunity to see who was present, some of the highlights. You've got really where to focus next. So we put it into smart action items or tasks. And then you have the ability to see, if you want the full notes, you have that. You can see the visual, you have the audio. Most families don't use that. Really, they just want to know, like, what do I need to take away from here so that when I share with my support network, when I share with the neighbors, the movement group, family, this is the important information. And then when I go to leave and tomorrow when I go to, kind of get focused, I want to know where do I put my energy? And so having the clarity of, okay, these are the tasks to focus on, that's really important. So we're able to kind of turn that into a flow where you can see what is it I need to focus on? Here's the information I need to share. And then you can, quickly post it to a community space so you can see what this looks like. So if people want to interact or comment, they have that ability. So it eliminates the need to do, 10 different phone calls, 5 different text messages. It just makes it seamless all in one spot. So
Yeah. I find
here's an
that very,
example.
very, very helpful. You know why? Because with the brain, it already it is definitely telling the caregiver's brain like, okay, things are somehow there's organization, it's organized. So then, like you said, they can move on to okay, what's important now? What you if you know what I'm trying to say here, it happens to me. It happens to all of us. I feel better when I'm able to write down, make a list. Okay, these are the things I need to know. Okay, once I put that down in paper, I'm like, okay, I can move on and go do the things I need to do because I know everything is it's there. It's written.
Yeah,
And so I can always go back to it. It's organized. Yes.
exactly. And you can add notes after the fact. So this was just an example of, the conversation that you and I, just a quick snippet to show people how it works. And I was able to just go in because sometimes, it's you don't know when you're in the conversation. You need time to reflect. You want to come back to it
Right.
after you've had the chance to talk with family, give it a little bit more thought. So yeah, having the same facts to operate from, that is huge. We've had families say, when I become a primary caregiver, I have family members and siblings and other people that have questions and it's overwhelming and maybe sometimes that dynamic isn't healthy either, so I don't really want to engage. But if I have the ability to capture this information and then a space to share it, it's proactive. Everyone's part of the same conversation. We're operating from the same facts, so there's no bias, there's no things falling through the cracks, and that actually softens the dynamic with families because now you've got people that are working together collectively because they can have informed conversations and not be concerned if something was forgotten or missed or so people will use this for appointments at home. We have families that use it for tracking progress. So, OT, like occupational therapy, physical therapy, they really want to know what's going over time. Those patterns are really important to recognize. Are they progressing as they should be? Are there gaps in care? Are there things that we can do differently to support them? And those questions often come up with a lot of, individuals who are going and actively talking to their support network. Doctors will ask, how are you doing? How's your gait? How do you feel? Like, and so if you're
Absolutely.
tracking all of that, it's so easy to then pull it up and go, oh, here you go. This is what it looks like. Here's what's been going on. We have, and I didn't even get into it when I showed you, but we have a journal. So it's a, 1 minute a day. You can capture how are you feeling? What's your energy level at? How much time do you spend on yourself? It's really focused on the caregiver so that they can start to reflect and see that relationship between how their wellness is relative to the care that they're extending. So they can track all the care events. I spent my time on appointments, I spent on meal prep, I spent on medication management, and you can kind of adjust the hours. And so you start to see that relationship. And when you have that awareness, it makes it easier to open the door and go, oh, I didn't realize that this was an issue. Or,
Yeah. And for
maybe.
me, and for me as a clinician, you know how important it is sometimes when the patients or caregivers are able to capture like a video or something, especially let's say they're talking about, oh, my mom had a seizure, right? And then they capture the moment. And because we're able to see it, like, okay, we can say, I don't, you might think that that looks this or that, and there's so many things. Oh, for example, depending on, caregivers don't know, sometimes they don't know the difference between psychosis or hallucinations.
Yeah.
There's, and so if we're able to see, what's happening in the moment, we're able to make a much better informed, getting their history and seeing things. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's huge. I think we miss that's something that technology is great. We're so immersed extending care and being present that sometimes you're not thinking about the patterns. You're not thinking about, there was a situation with a family and they were concerned. They started looking at memory care options because they were like, I don't know, we have these days. I think my mom's showing early signals. She might have Alzheimer's. And I think it's natural to jump to some of these conclusions,
Mm-hmm.
given the information that we know or we don't know. But what I think they were missing is they started to journal it and they realized after a couple weeks, they're like, "Oh, she actually doesn't need to go to a $80,000 a year memory facility. She just needs a little bit additional support on these days because the days where she's showing these signals of, being a little bit more forgetful, having a little bit more brain fog, being a little more anxious, those are the days when she has appointments, or those are the days, when there's notable things happening in her life, and when you can rally around that and give her additional support. You've just having,
Yes,
like, access to information is power. Having the ability to look at that
absolutely.
information, you can make a
Yes.
different decision, you can save money, you can preserve her quality of life, her preference to age and place at home, like, there's so
It's
much. I get
like
so passionate about this, yeah.
oh, me too. Tell me again, as a
Yeah.
clinician, like for example, there are many things out there that mimic dementia, right? And people think, oh my God, this is, oh, or the opposite. Let's say the patient it's having something acutely, actually something that can be solved, then they think, oh, it's because of she has dementia, and they just kind of, oh, it's that's just her normal. No, it's not. She's having let's say, a UTI, and this is actually affecting her brain, and this and that, affecting other things, and if you act promptly, you can take care of certain things and
Yes.
even avoid sometimes, you know, things that are maybe later cannot,
That is
it's
such a common one. We worked with an organization and had the opportunity to work with families in this focus group setting, and we had one of the families share a story where they're managing care. There's a couple siblings. They're managing care across states. So naturally, you've got, everyone brings something unique to the table. And one of the siblings was a little bit more analytical, and another one was maybe a little bit more emotionally reactive. And they had a situation where their mom ended up having surgery. She was taking medication. And because she had the surgery, they were there helping her, and they had been there for a week. And they thought, oh my gosh, we missed the signal. Something's not right. I think mom actually also has a cognitive condition, and they started panicking, and the telephone game by the time it reaches the third
right.
sibling, it's a whole nother story. And so anyways, it ended up in this scenario, and then what they did is they went back, and the one sibling, he had said, why don't we just try to track, let's just capture this information and record it, just journal it, and do that for a few days and see if maybe there's something else here, because I don't know how we would have missed this. I can't imagine this is going on. So anyways, what they ended up happening was she got an infection, ended up being a UTI, ended up presenting itself with some, forgetfulness, cognitive stuff. And because they hadn't seen her a while, and they were just, they were there and, maybe jumping to conclusions. But because they tracked it, they went back to the doctor, they were able to have an informed conversation and then figure out, oh, okay, no, it's not that. And that immediately brought everyone back to a place of like,
And
okay,
able to take care of it before it could actually end up being something
yes,
even worse, because there
yes,
are things that when most people don't understand, for example, in the case of dementia, it's supposed to be progressive. It's not something that starts like this, and because sometimes they they don't know the definition, then again, it could be anything. It could be meningitis, it could be a brain, I mean, anything. I always tell
yeah,
that to my patients. So again, knowledge is definitely power for sure.
yeah.
Wow.
I
I
wanna
wish,
pull
I
this
mean,
up because as we're
we could
talking about that, I feel like this is
uh-huh,
relevant. I
okay.
didn't hit on this before. This tends to be for families that are a little bit deeper in their care journey. Most families, that we have the opportunity to work with are usually in a change, a new diagnosis, a shift, living shift, crisis, accident. But for families that often have a chronic condition, a lot of families are navigating, cognitive impairment. This journal is their gold. So, in 1 minute a day, it prompts you, how are you feeling? What are your emotions? What's happening in life? Where's your energy at? How much time are you spending on yourself? You have the option to kind of do some guided reflection. You can also upload any documents, photos, videos, anything that you want to associate with that day. And then you can talk about, oh, what did I do for care today? How did I help my dad? And you can capture these things, and then you can go down here and you can adjust kind of what the time looks like, and then talk about, maybe today was hard. Dad really was struggling. He was kind of upset at everything that I was suggesting and that we were doing. It was really a difficult negotiation to try to get him to eat or take his meds, or, it was a really frustrating day, and I don't know how long I can do this on my own. These are signals that indicate what's happening with the care recipient and the caregiver. When you can see these patterns over time, you start to see like, oh, wow, we noticed this was a great week. And when you look at, on average, how are you feeling? How much time are you extending? Where is it going? You can start to close the gap. You can start to recommend, services, resources. You can start to see for families that are going and trying to get additional financing or funding. And they often are asked, at the government level, well, how much time are you spending? What are you doing? This is great when you have family dynamics. It's like, where is all this time going? If we were to hire someone, where would that be most valuable? There's so much richness in just spending 1 minute a day and capturing this information. It's just, to your point, the way it informs discussions, the way it informs family dynamics. decisions. There's so much here, and I know it takes a little bit to kind of get into that flow because I think
Right.
sometimes people might think, well, journaling is a little youthful, or I don't have time. You don't even have to use these prompts. You can just go and click our note scribe and talk to it, and it will
Hmm.
summarize. And then you've got an audit trail so you can see over time what's going on. And we can look for patterns to kind of help you get in front of things. So you have options. You don't need the
Yeah.
dexterity and the vision. You can just talk. Just 1 minute, 30 seconds, whatever it is, whatever the comfort is. And families are so creative. We had one family who two really cool situations, but one family end of life. So they were in a different scenario, and when you think about scrapbooks, they had said, we really want to preserve my mom's voice. We want to have conversations, and we want to take videos, and we want to share, and we want to talk about what matters, and we also want to talk about what's going on that day because they were concerned that some of that condition was, genetic. And so they wanted to know, like, what are the markers that we should be looking for if any of us happen to get to that point. And then when we're looking at those markers, we want to be able to hear her voice. There's undercurrents, there's emotion, there's, the inflection point. Like those are rich things that if you can track is valuable for just the family when you think about the legacy that they're leaving and they're creating. But it's also so powerful for families. We had one family and their dad was diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's. And so they were already starting to try to figure out their mom had passed a couple years before, so they knew this was gonna be one of those situations where they were really great about preparing. So they're trying to be proactive, and their dad was really resistant, was afraid his independence was being, compromised. He didn't wanna go talk to anyone, he wasn't ready for this. "I'm only in my 70s, I'm young, I'm gonna be fine." And so they ended up using our note scribe and just having casual at-home conversations of his preferences because they knew that in 6 months or a year, they didn't wanna carry the weight of having to make that decision. They wanted to be able to reflect back and say, "Hey, dad, we had this conversation. Here's what your preferences were." He could hear his own voice, and that brings comfort. You can share that with other people that you're bringing in the loop to try to respect and honor his wishes, and you don't have that friction of having to leave the house, having to speak with a professional, having to it's just starting somewhere, starting small is so powerful. So, yeah, families are
It's
so great.
beautiful. It is beautiful. Wow, I could talk with you for hours, days into this, into all the ideas, all the you're as passionate. I mean, this is something that I love, finding ways to help caregivers. Crystal, is there anything else I have not asked you that you're like, I really need to get that out there. I really need to tell people about this?
Oh, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of questions I think, we could easily talk about. I think maybe one thing is, sometimes families feel like they have to choose between being present and being organized enough to have clarity. And I don't think that that needs to be the case. I think that you don't have to choose between getting help and staying, in control. I think that if you use tools, if you look for infrastructure that can help you through your journey, something like Innerhive and this note scribe, it gives you the ability to be present. And so that clarity and connection, some people think it's luxuries. They don't think they need it yet. It's the people that resist getting glasses are like, I'm just gonna, put the book this close and I'm gonna deal with the headaches. And then when they do, and they lean into these tools and they realize how much it actually supports them and it doesn't replace, it doesn't strip their humanity, it actually enhances it. I think it's possible. And so I think if people can just even just one baby step, start with one appointment, capturing one piece of information, something somewhere. It's just, you can't do this alone. And I think it's important. Some people feel like they need to, or something has to be sacrificed. And I think there's a way where you can be present and have clarity and you can have that support that you deserve because it's really important that we're promoting our own wellness just as much as those we care for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, Crystal, thank you so much for your transparency, your heart. I mean, the mission that you have, built through Inner Hive, I feel like your work is giving families something they rarely receive, I would call it a place to breathe, to understand, to not feel alone. And I just want to say for everyone out there listening, if you're caring for someone, coordinating care or trying to stay balanced, like Crystal just mentioned here, in a season that feels like heavier than expected, because I can only imagine, right? I think that Inner Hive is a resource that's been created just for you. So I want you to connect with Crystal and explore everything that Inner Hive has to offer. So Crystal, tell the audience how they can get in touch with you or what they need to do. Where do they
Yeah,
go?
of course. You can go to our website to learn a little bit more. There's actually QR codes on there if you want to download from Google Play or the App Store. Inner Hive, so it's all one word, inner like your inner circle, hive like a beehive. We're big nature lovers and we really loved the bee social structure. And we found a lot of, there was a lot of little symbolic things that we really wanted to bring in terms of what that meant for us and how we each build our support network. And so innerhive.com, find information. You can also email us at hello@innerhive.com. We're always available for any feedback, questions, thoughts. We're always eager to learn, what things are most valuable to families. Where are they struggling the most? How can, tools plus the human side come together to just make this journey easier? I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect calm, but I absolutely think that there's a way to kind of ride these waves together so that, we're not drowning or slowly suffocating in silence.
Wow, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I'm pretty sure I think you are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I've seen you there. So people are on social media. Try to reach out. I think it's all worth it. Thank you so much. We'll have you back anytime you want to come back and see how's the journey, how's everything going with Inner Hive, and if you have any new updates or anything to give us. Okay.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm grateful to have been here and I look forward to connecting with your community.
Awesome. Thank you, Crystal. For everybody out there, thank you and stay unscripted. Hi, everyone. As a neurology nurse practitioner, I've seen how overwhelming health information can be. Between medical jargon, online noise, and conflicting advice, people often feel lost. That's why I created Rosabel, to make brain and health education simple, approachable, and empowering. Inside this membership area, you'll find practical tools like the Resource Center, where you can download free guides, forms, and worksheets that help you track your health and better understand your body. You'll also find exclusive content where I share insights about brain function, stress, migraines, memory, and many other topics, all explained in everyday language. Now, one of the most meaningful parts of Rosa Believers is our Facebook community. This space was built so that subscribers can connect, communicate, and learn from each other. Here's where you can ask questions, share your progress, support each other, and be part of real conversations about brain health, self-care, and personal growth. Because while learning is important, community is what keeps us motivated and reminds us that we're not alone.